Today, we start a brand new adventure. What's up, guys? Brett with Ansel's Adventures here. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you're a long-time supporter, welcome back. We got a new project today. As you can see, it's behind me. Stay tuned. Alright guys, here's the new adventure boat. A buddy of mine at work has it, a boy named Josh. And he is down to do some relic hunting and some scuba diving with it. And yeah, duck hunting boat. It's going to be an all-in-one kind of deal. We're going to reglass the inside. We're going to camo it up, slap some seats in this bad boy, and yeah, this ought to be a good time right here. Boat's in really good shape. I'm going to go through the carbs on the motor, change the lower unit oil, and get that squared away. Do a little bit of adjustment on the trailer to make it sit a little bit better. New bottom paint, and we should be ready to go. So that's the plan. This is a nice boat. We got a good platform to start with, and it should be a lot more stable in the water than a John boat, which is making me really happy because we've already had some times in a John boat. So what we're going to start with, we've got a 30 horsepower Nissan 4-stroke. It ran about 2 years ago, and we're gonna start taking the carbs off, and I'll do a video. I guess this video will be the first video of quite a few, but I'm gonna start into these carbs, show you how to take them apart, clean the carburetor, put it all back together, and that'll be step one done. All right, stay tuned. All right, so we got the motor cover off. Let me show you what we got going on. All right, so here's the carburetor assembly. I think it's got 6 bolts, a couple hose clamps, and a few fuel lines, and some throttle linkage. It's really not too big a deal to get them off in most cases, unless you have some bolts that mount the carburetors that are seized up or something like that. It's usually not too bad. The carburetors really aren't that detailed as far as they're not worse than any motorcycle or four-wheeler, stuff like that, and I've done tons. So let me show you what we need. So basically it's just some cutters to cut the zip ties that are holding the fuel line on, some needle nose pliers, 10mm wrench, and a flathead screwdriver. What I'm going to start with first is taking the air filter bolts out and the hose clamps so I can get that out of the way. Don't drop anything. This really isn't a bad project in most cases. I've done tons and tons of four-wheelers and motorcycles. They're all basically the same, even on these. Outboards aren't too awful bad until you start getting into the electronics of it. That's where most people have the issue. But carbs, they're not too bad at all. Alright, so what I've done, I've loosened up this clamp right here just that so I can get it off the airbox and try to get this separated. I might have to give it a little persuasion. These things go flying. Alright, there's the airbox out of the way. Set that to the side, pull these rubber grommets off, get them out of the way, and so we don't drop one. Not too bad. Alright, so these are the mounting bolts here, and there's 6 of them, holds them all together into the plate. And then let's see, it actually looks like one linkage for the throttle. Hopefully you can see this right down here. That's just a clip up, pop-up clip. 2 fuel lines there, and it looks like it runs 2 to 1. So that shouldn't be too big a deal. All right, stay tuned. All right, so I switched to my super duper chest cam mount, just so you can see where my hands are, and I have my hands free. I'm not holding the camera. I'll start by cutting these hose clamps off that are just zip ties. Get them out of the way. And these fuel lines are probably pretty brittle. We may end up replacing them. hard to say. I don't know exactly how old this motor is. It's not terribly old, but you start getting into hoses and stuff. You don't want a hose that's leaking, especially a fuel line. It's nothing but problems. Okay, on the throttle linkage, it usually just pops up, yep, just like that. Then you kick it out to the side, and the throttle's unhooked. Easy peasy. All right, let me get another wrench. Take these bolts out here. I can't reach them with a wrench back here behind this other throttle body plate, so we're going to use a ratchet and a socket. All right, so all we have here is just a standard 3/8 ratchet with a 10mm socket, and hopefully we can cheat it in here to get to these. Might have to use a 1/4 inch to get to the back ones, just for the size of the socket. And these bolts are actually, that one was loose, that one's loose, so this might not have been running too well to begin with. If this leaks right here, it'll draw air between the gasket and the carburetor, and it'll cause it to run lean, and no bueno. All right, we're back. We're now down to 1/4 inch, and hopefully, yes, it'll fit. Luckily for me, I've been a mechanic for most of my life, and I have quite a bit of tools, just for, you know, pretty much every scenario, because I've been into it one time or another. But most of this stuff, if you don't have it, you can pick it up cheap from an auto parts store or Harbor Freight. Everybody bashes Harbor Freight stuff because it's cheap made and all, but you know, if you're a weekend warrior, chances are it'll get you through pretty much anything you need to do. That's what that ratchet came from. I love it. So yeah, we're gonna get these bolts out, get the carbs off, and see you at the workbench. All right, guys, we're back at the workbench. This is a carburetor assembly, as it is on the boat. It's just like this. It's all complete. I did have 2 wires to unhook for the electric choke, but not a big deal. And now these will only go one way. So if you get the order mixed up, it'll be a problem. Hopefully we can just pop this linkage off to separate all 3. That's a gasket or a spacer. All the gaskets look good. They're made all together, but we're going to cut these because I don't have to remove those gaskets and have to purchase new gaskets. So if all goes well, all we have to do is pull them apart, clean all the gum out of them from sitting in the bowls and through the jets, put them back together, and we should be good. All right, so what I've got a razor blade, and I'm just going to cut this gasket. Whew, and it is brittle. It actually broke. Try to be a little bit more gentle with this one, because I don't want the gaskets to break, because they're in good shape and we don't need to buy them for no reason. All right, we're going to pull the bolts out. Actually, I think we're not going to pull the bolts out. Let's keep these together so I can see how this linkage works. I have not done these carburetors before. First time for me. However, most of them are pretty much the same. They work like four-wheeler carburetors or linked carburetors on a motorcycle. Kind of the same deal. Alright, let's get rid of these hose clamps, or these zip ties. And they're not running a lot of fuel pressure, so generally zip ties are what people use on marine carburetors to hold the fuel lines on. Alright, got that one separated. Get this one separated. And then we're ready to bust these apart. If I can get this hose off. And all these hoses feel good and rubbery. They're not brittle or cracking or anything when I'm pulling on them, so that's a good sign. Alright, let's go ahead and get this plate off. Our rings look good. This motor's in really good shape. It's just from sitting. That's all this is from. Ethanol gas. It's maybe great if you're driving it daily, but if it sits at all, it will ruin a carburetor. It just gums them up so bad that no gas can flow through it. Alright, we're going to start with the first one at the top, work our way down. So we're going to set these to a side. Keep them in order. Always keep them in order. I don't think you could have any problem with them mixing up, but you never know, especially if you're kind of new to this. But again, you can always take pictures and video of it. Looks exactly how all the hoses are run, where all the bolts are, everything. And then you have something you can actually go back and look at if you get hung up. I do that a lot, especially if it's a really, really in-depth project that I've never done before. But like I said, most of these are pretty easy. All right, for this, number 2 Phillips. And most of the time these just come right out. They're not too bad unless somebody's been in here monkeying with them and stripped the heads of the screws off. That happens quite a bit. Most of the time, marine stuff is stainless steel, which usually isn't a problem, but it's actually soft and you can strip the heads off pretty bad. And another thing too, they use aluminum bolts sometimes, and they'll put it in steel, or they use a steel bolt and put it in an aluminum part, and it'll actually seize up. Now, these things are actually in great shape. There is hardly any residue in here at all. So that tells me that he either, one, ran it out of gas, or he drained the fuel system before he put the boat away. Because normally in the bottom of this bowl right here would be a brown tar goo, almost the consistency of peanut butter, and with ethanol it turns white and gels up and looks like petroleum jelly, and it'll clog all these passageways up. And this is where your gas flows through. Comes in your fuel line, out through here, and into your carburetor. And the float assembly, get in focus here, as the fuel level rises, the float floats up and shuts the gas off. If it's gummed up, this will stay down, won't shut the fuel off, and sometimes the float will rise, but the needle jet will be clogged up, and fuel runs everywhere, runs out the front of the carburetors and makes a big mess, and you can't figure out why. That is why. But this one actually moves really well, and I can actually see the needle moving, so that's a good thing. All right, let's dive a little deeper into this. All right, so what we're going to do is remove this float. We just take out this Phillips head screwdriver right here, or screw right here. Comes right out. And then the float assembly just slides right out. And be careful, because there is a needle valve right here. On some of these floats, this is a metal, usually copper or brass, and you can actually set the float height by this. This one's plastic. You can't set it. There's no adjustment, so we don't have to worry about it getting out of adjustment. Also, right here on the end of this needle valve, if I can get it to focus, is rubber. And a lot of times you'll see a groove worn into this where it's been sitting there for so long, and it will not seat and shut your fuel off. So you need to make sure this is nice and rubbery, which it is. That looks good. Set that aside. Also, I highly recommend having a magnetic container to put all your screws and bolts in. It won't stick to stainless, but at least you have them all together. Stuff like this, there's little pins that hold the float in, tons of little screws. You don't want to lose them. Put them in a container. Washers and stuff like that, not a big deal. We know where those go. They're on the carburetor mounting bolts. So, in these carbs, you have 2 jets. You have a main jet and a low idle jet, or low speed jet. That is a check valve right there for another jet, and that is for the accelerator pump. You can see how it actually pumps it right there. Okay, so we're going to pull these 2 jets out, spray them out with air, make sure they're nice and open. The low idle jet is really, really small. I mean, you can barely get a bread tie through it to clean it. The main jet is a lot bigger, and generally you can get that clean pretty easy. It's not too big a deal. All right, we'll get those out. Okay, one thing I want to point out, the main jet right here, it's a slotted screwdriver head, and I know somebody's been in this carb because they used the wrong size screwdriver to get it out, and they actually just about stripped the end of that out, which would be a nightmare to try to get out. That's your main jet right there, and you can actually see it, I think, in the light, if I get it just so. You can actually see through this one, so I know it's open. So that's a good deal. This is your low idle jet, and it's itty bitty teeny little hole, and I can actually see through that one as well. So we're good on those. We're still going to clean them with carb cleaner and spray them out, make sure they're good. Spray out all these passages. Be careful not to lose anything that may be inside of these holes, because sometimes there are springs, like this has a jet inside of a jet, that you don't want to drop, because it would be a nightmare to try to find. So it's got all these little holes around the side for a Venturi effect. Main hole through the center, all that looks good. I'm really impressed with these carbs, how clean they are. This looks like it may be an easy one. I don't want to jinx myself, but might not be too bad. I like it. Gotta be careful of our gasket. Open up inside, all that is spotless. Josh did a really good job putting this away for the year. You can tell. Alright, we'll keep going. Alright guys, I got everything blown out, cleaned up. It looks amazing in here. So what we're going to do is put this back together in the order we took it apart, just in reverse. And it's that simple. Now if you had one that was sitting for a very, very long time, and it was full of ethanol gas, which is not a good idea to run ethanol on a boat unless you're running it all the time, you may have more issues as far as the varnish and stuff that gets accumulated, and how bad it may be to get it out. A lot of auto parts stores sell gallon cans of carb cleaner that you can actually dip the whole carburetor in, provided you get rid of all the rubber. Can't leave any gaskets on, or gaskets like this, rubber O-rings, because it'll swell them up and ruin them. If it's that bad off, chances are you're going to need more parts anyways, and you'll get a carburetor rebuild kit. Comes with all new gaskets and stuff anyways. So, with that being said, this thing looks amazing. Like I said, don't be scared to try this on your own. It's really, really not that big a deal. Biggest problem I've had with boats is with the electrical and the timing side of it, because boats are just different as far as how that works. But I'm not going to dive too much into that and confuse everybody. Verify the float works, which it does. I like it. Okay, this is the top side of the carburetor, and all three of them are the same. In this particular carburetor, there is nothing to really maintain. In a four-wheeler carburetor, motorcycle carburetor, stuff like that, there's actually a piston with a needle valve that moves up and down in here that you need to clean and, you know, make sure it's no gummed up stuff in there. But on these, there's nothing here but a gasket and different ports that the carburetor sucks through. So nothing too big on these. If you have a different style, you may have to pull these 3-4 bolts out of the, or screws out of the top, pull the top cover off, and see what's going on in there, and check it for gummed up varnish stuff. Okay? Alright, we've got everything back together. Everything's tight, looks good. So we're going to repeat the process 2 more times. Get these carbs installed back on this motor. Checking this gasket, make sure that's good. It's got one little piece that's popped up right there, but it should be fine, because the carburetor, or the intake, will actually sit below that. So we're good on that. It's still good and flexible. Alright, so what we're going to do, what we're going to attempt to do, is pick these up and assemble these as the entire stack. There's one fuel line right here that is kind of a pain for where it's at, but I think we can cheat it and get it in here in one stack. That would be really nice if everything lines up the way it's supposed to. First try. What I'm going to do is just start a couple of them, run them up by hand until I get them all lined up. So don't have, like I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted by a dead battery on my GoPro. I'm going to get these started by hand make sure all of them are started before we get anything snugged down, because there's pretty tight tolerances between the carburetors, and it is a little tough getting that on that one, on that bolt. And I'm sorry if the camera's a little shaky. Filming and working at the same time all by yourself is kind of tough, but what do you do? Alright, so we're just going to run all these down, get them snug, and then tighten them up. And we want them good and tight, but too tight is broke. So once you get them tight, stop. If you keep going, you're going to snap threads out, snap a bolt, then you've got big problems. So something to keep in mind. Alright, let me get this finished up. Alright, so we got the carburetor bolts tight. I hooked the electronic choke bars back up, and I actually had to fix this connector. When I pulled it apart, it actually pulled the wire off the connector. Not a big deal. Crimp it back together, good to go. So now what I'm going to do is put my hoses back on and then secure them with zip ties, just like they had them. Most of this stuff, if you put it back exactly the way it was, you should be fine. Like I said, unless you're running into something crazy that is damaged or cracked or dry rotted, something along those lines, and you'll be able to feel it in your hands when you take it apart. If it's brittle, you try to pull the hose off and it cracks on you, or it's really, really hard, change it. If not, you're going to get towed in. It's just not worth it. All these feel really good. And like I said, this motor's not very old. I don't know exactly what year it is. Can't see what year it is on the tag. But it's been very well taken care of. Josh did a good job putting this up for the winter. When he parked it last. Sorry about the camera angles. So yeah, that's pretty much it on the hoses. All we've got left to do is put the airbox back on and connect the vent tube. And yeah, that should wind this one up. Alright guys, here's the finished product. Things all back together, everything's buttoned up, all the wires are back connected together. Airbox is on, hoses are tight. The vent hose is tight. Fuel lines are good. I got one more clamp to put on right there that I just noticed. That's why you always double check. And yeah, we'll wrap this thing up. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got something out of it. As you can see, it's not a big deal. People make a pretty big deal out of cleaning boat carbs or rebuilding them. And basically the procedure is the same. You're just changing out parts. You're changing out jets or gaskets, maybe a float. But you can see, there's really not that much to it. Like I say, if I'm into something I've never done before, I take pictures. I'll take a video of it, point out anything to myself that may be kind of tricky if there's multiple wires or whatever, because 99% of what I do I've never done before, and I'm self-taught. I've had plenty of automotive experience and some formal training in that, but boat motors and stuff like that, I'm learning on the fly. The basic principles are the same, so once you get them down, you're pretty well good to go. So don't be scared to attempt something like this yourself. It'll save you a ton of money in the long run. So I hope you liked the video. Please hit that like button, comment, tell me what you think. If y'all want to see some more videos like this, let me know, because I'm gonna have quite a few more just on this boat in particular. And then I've got 2 more. I've got my John boat up front, and I've got my 19-foot fiberglass boat up there to get going and get ready for summertime, because it's right around the corner, almost boating season. So hope you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks guys.